Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Well, pretty much stating the obvious here, but as you can tell from the Halloween backdrop behind me, and this being the weekend after Thanksgiving, obviously, I am behind once again, and I'm going to use this opportunity to continue forward reviewing the Halloween-themed books that I read this past season. Also, obviously, because of the thumbnail that I have for this video, my best friend Connie has returned as a special guest since we are going to be reviewing the Halloween-themed anthology Haunted Nights, which was composed by Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton. I would like to add that this kick-ass book had been recommended to me by the awesome viewer named Adrian Lee. And I would just like to thank her for recommending this book because I know for a fact that I loved it, Connie loved it, and the majority of our readers group loved it as well. So thank you so very much for that recommendation. And speaking of
Hey.
Carrie, Halloween's over. The treats are over. The tricks are over. It's over.
Oh no, Alex, it's not over. It's never over. As a matter of fact, I drew another tarot card for you.
Hand it to me. What the hell is this? I know it's going to be something horrible. This is going to be something awful. You're going to do something awful to me. And then while I'm just wallowing in my misery, you're going to be over there getting your dirty little rocks off. Five of Swords. What the hell does this mean?
Well, you may find a lot of opposition, conflict, and defeat, but those who care about you will stand by you and will want to find a peaceful resolution.
That's it. Go ahead. Do your thing. But what are you going to do?
No, that's all.
Seriously.
Seriously.
All right, then. I guess since today's my lucky day, I'm just going to continue forward with this review and not have anything bad happen to me for a change. So, as I was trying to say, this is a book that I buddy read with my good online friends Hanny, Nisa, and Blake, as well as my good friend Tammy. And even though the majority of us enjoyed this book, Tammy DNF'd about midway through because she just simply said it wasn't her cup of tea. Even still, the rest of us continued to have some pretty good discussions about how open the stories were. But before I get a little too far ahead of myself, let's see what's been new with Connie.
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be back and so excited to dive into Haunted Nights. I had a great Halloween. I went to New Orleans with Carrie and Alex and a couple friends. We hung out with Alex's cousins. We went to Nola Nightmare. We went to the Death Museum, the Insectarium. We hung out at the Dungeon and a few other bars. We went to Ghost Manor. That was a blast. We had an awesome time. Yeah, that's pretty much what's been new with me and how I spent my Halloween.
And you totally left out that you got completely drunk and danced to When a Man Loves a Woman. Well, I'm really happy that you've been able to return so we can review Haunted Nights.
Didn't Carrie draw the Five Swords card for you?
He did, Connie, but that's not relevant. As I was trying to say...
Hey, Brownie!
Yes.
Eat shit!
So, if any of you are watching, especially Adrian Lee, we hope you enjoy this review. But without further ado, let's see what kind of spooky things might be lurking about on a cold October night.
Yes.
Haunted Nights, edited by Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton, opens up with a historic introduction about Halloween that sets the stage for 16 fun and frightening tales that all regard the spookiest time of the year.
Among the collected stories, not only are readers presented with Halloween customs that we normally see today, there were quite a few tales steeped in Celtic lore as well as tales that revolve around European and Spanish roots.
Which, in this mixed bag of tricks and treats, installments include the subgenres of folk horror, supernatural horror, psychological horror, suspense, dark comedy, and even science fiction.
And from start to finish, readers are confronted by ghosts, stingy Jack, witches, creatures, headless phantoms, an infamous documentary, aliens, and the devil himself.
So, no matter what your horror preference is, the diversity of this book is sure to satisfy any lover of Halloween. In an interview conducted by Sadie Hartman with Lit Reactor, Ellen Datlow shared that unless she's co-editing and the other editor wants to screen slush for a week or two, story submissions for her anthologies are by invite only. Upon gathering stories for Haunted Nights, there were only a few available slots for open submissions. Because of this, volunteers from the Horror Writers Association read what was submitted, and once finished, they passed a few stories on for consideration. Datlow elaborated the reason why she prefers invite only is because her time is limited, and she doesn't have the opportunity to read hundreds of submissions. Also, she doesn't want dozens of rejected stories on the same theme floating around. In an interview conducted by the Halloween Preservation Society, Lisa Morton, who is described as a world-class Halloween expert, explained her fascination with Halloween didn't begin until she started to research her first book, The Halloween Encyclopedia. Which it was during this time that she became obsessed with how the holiday has been so often misrepresented over the decades, and how the holiday seems to continuously change and adapt to the times. To secure her title as a world-class Halloween expert, aside from the Halloween Encyclopedia, Morton has also released Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween and a Halloween Anthology, literary and historical writings over the centuries.
Fun facts!
Connie, I swear to God, one of these days I am gonna just knock the
Shut up! Or the next pie you get in your face won't be Marie Gallagher's.
Ew, the floor is yours.
Here's some things you might not know about the authors in this collection. Jonathan Marbury is a 5-time Bram Stoker Award winner and a New York Times best-selling author. Among his achievements, he has edited anthologies, produced comic books, has been a playwright, and much more. He is the recipient of the Inkpot Award, 3 Scribe Awards, and he has been named as one of today's top 10 horror writers. Since 2001, Australian author Garth Nix has been a full-time writer, and included with his achievements, he has contributed greatly to literary arts by providing services as an agent, a marketing consultant, an editor, a publicist, a book sales representative, and a bookseller. Throughout this time, he has won multiple Aurelius Awards, the Ditmar Award, the Poet Award, the CBCA Honor Book, and has been shortlisted for Locus Awards, the Shirley Jackson Award, and others. For over a decade, Kate Jones has acted as a chief editor for the Bram Stoker Award-winning small press known as Onaman Gatherum Publishing, a house that has been nominated for multiple Bram Stoker and Shirley Jackson Awards. Aside from her editorial services, Kate Jones has been nominated 3 times for the Bram Stoker Award and once for the Shirley Jackson Award. Her short fiction has been featured in the Best Horror of the Year, Black Static, Pseudopod Gamut, and Haunted Nights. Kelly Armstrong is a Canadian author who has published over 30 novels which range from fantasy to horror to crime thriller. These works include 13 novels in her Women series, 5 in her Kingsville series, 6 in her Rotten series, 3 in her Darkest Power series, 3 in her Darkness Rising trilogy, 3 in the Age of Legend series, 3 standalone teen thrillers, and 3 crime novels in the Nadia Stanford trilogy. She has also published 3 middle-aged fantasy novels in the Black World Page trilogy with co-author Melissa Marr. Throughout her career, S.P. Miskowski has received 2 National Endowment for the Arts fellowships, 4 Shirley Jackson Award nominations, 2 Bram Stoker Award nominations, and she won the Charles Sexer Award from Strange Eons magazine for her second novel, I Wish I Was Like You. Miskowski's stories have been published in multiple fantasy and horror magazines and anthologies, and she currently published 7 novels, 2 collections, and she has edited 2 anthologies. Brian Evenson's work has been translated into over 10 languages, and among his achievements, his books Wanda and Immobility were both finalists in the Shirley Jackson Awards, and his novel The Open Curtain was a finalist for the Edgar Award and the International Horror Guild Award. His novel Last Saves won the American Library Association's Award for Best Horror Novel of 2009, and his book The Wavering Knife, which won the IHG Award for his Best Story Collection. He is the recipient of 3 O. Henry Prizes and an NEA Fellowship.
Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler segment, which, if you haven't read this book before, we're about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. So if you would like to click away, all you have to do is scroll down to the comments section and click on the comment that we have pinned at the top that has a timestamp in it. Once you click on that timestamp, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So, wait. Your thread a little bit ago. Do you want to do this?
Do you want a face full of pie?
Floor is yours.
Thanks. Ready, set, go!
Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, we would like to talk about a few of our favorite stories. First up is The 17-Year Itch by Garth Nix.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this story opens up 6 weeks prior to Halloween and takes place in an asylum for the criminally insane, which early on we're introduced to a new hospital administrator by the name of Dr. Orlando and her assistant Robert, who have just discovered a mysterious restraint spear within the facility. Eventually, they learn from an orderly named Templar, who had worked at the asylum for the majority of his life, that the spear had been specially built for a patient named Stephen, who is also known by the nickname Stubbsy, on the account that Stephen had amputated all of his fingers and toes to mid-knuckle. Which, due to Stephen suffering from an unexplained itch, it's revealed that every Halloween this itch worsens, and it's to the point where he has to be restrained in the spear from Halloween Eve until November 1st. Furthermore, it's revealed that every 17 years on Halloween, Stephen's itch intensifies beyond belief. And it just so happens this is the 17th year. Well, after not listening to reason, Dr. Orlando says that she's not going to cater to Stephen's delusion. And while standing firm on her decision, come Halloween, she denies him his safe space. Shortly thereafter, she regrets her decision because she discovers that his horrific itch is actually caused by something supernatural and it's looking for a new host. Y'all, this story creeped me the hell out, and the further I read, the more it got under my skin because it made me remember about this one time in my younger year when I dated a guy who gave me scabies. And yeah, this story brought back all of that hellacious itching, so the author knew what he was talking about. But I really enjoyed the tension of this story because even though we knew all hell was going to break loose, I didn't know exactly how it was going to break loose. And when we got to the grand finale, not only did I love the originality of this, but it creeped me out because it showed how easily something could be transferred from one person to the next. Otherwise, I was really fascinated with this story because even though it was written in a very open sense where everyone could draw their own conclusions, I really felt like the horror was biblical. And to justify that, I noticed where in one point of the story the author used the phrase old scratch, which this reminded me of how Washington Irving called the devil Old Scratch in his story The Devil and Tom Walker. On top of that, since Stephen's itching transferred to the janitor like a spirit jumping from one body to the next, Hanny brought to our attention that the name Templar was significant because that translates into sacred space. Also, Nisa brought to our attention that the number 17 is supposedly an unlucky number because the Roman numeral 17 is an anagram for VIXI, which means I have lived. So, due to the spiritual possibilities and all of the itching, this is a story that will haunt me for a long time.
One of my favorite stories is A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night by Kate Jones. Now, the depressing story starts out on Devil's Night. Now, from those of you who don't know, the name came about due to the destruction and vandalism in Detroit and the surrounding areas on October 30th from 1960 to 1990. Now, while the story begins by introducing an intense and hostile environment, it presents a single mother and her two children who live in Section 8 apartments. And early on, we can see that the mother is overwhelmed and her emotionally disturbed son is not getting the therapeutic help that he needs. As the evening progresses and people are starting to set fires to the neighborhood, she tries to prevent her son from going out as he wants to go out and contribute to the chaos. After putting up a fight, he eventually agrees to stay home and put his sister to bed. Well, after she gets her children settled, she goes outside so she can siphon gas from her neighbor so she can go to work. But to her surprise, her neighbor willingly hands her a can of fuel. Yet instead of going to her car, she goes back inside her apartment. And after she sets everything on fire, she lays down next to her children so they can burn together. So, although most of the readers in our group didn't particularly care for this story, I don't know, it just spoke to me because it was different and made me think. And even though I read this one weeks ago, there's still things about it that I'm debating about. But before I get into all that, I just wanted to say I kind of felt bad for the mama because of just how overwhelmed and drained she was, like she's broke, living in poverty. Her son is a psychopathic little asshole. Her daughter's a brat who don't make things any easier. But for the most part, this story speaks to me because it's written in such a way that I don't know if the mother killed her family and herself due to her depression or if the devil made her do it. And if the devil did influence her, was that why she was hearing bats outside her house frequently? Even still, who's to say the devil actually existed in this story? Because for all we know, the mother was imagining the bat wings. And if she was insane, that could explain why her son was also disturbed. And personally, even though the story ends leaving us with a bunch of questions, I like the openness because I'm still debating what actually happened. Another favorite tale of mine was Nos Goblin Gay Off by Kelly Armstrong. Now, this tale focuses on two little classmates named Sienna and Lance. Now, Sienna may seem like she's the antagonist, but Lance has decided he has had enough and it is time for her to die. Now, he decides to accomplish this by taking her court stone from around the bonfire that has been set ablaze for Nos Goblin Gay Off. And for those who are curious, Nos Goblin Gay Off is a Welsh holiday that is celebrated on November 1st, and it's known as Winter's Eve or Spirit Night. And since it's a night known for spirits roaming around, lore focuses on two in particular, the Headless White Lady and the Tailless Black Sow, who like to terrorize the living. And in order to keep them away, a bonfire is lit and kept lit during the night. And since Nos Goblin Gay Off is known for its fortune telling and magic, It is tradition to build a bonfire and for everyone present to take a stone and write their name on it. And afterward, that everyone places their stone around the bonfire, and it is believed that if your stone remains in place, then you'll live another year. But if your stone wake up and your stone is missing, then it is believed that you're going to die within the next year. Now, while the locals are gathering, celebrating the holiday with festivities and games and everything, Lance decides that afterwards he's going to sneak back to the bonfire and take Sienna's core stone to guarantee that she dies within the next 12 months. Yet not everything goes as planned because Sienna is determined to make sure that her stone remains in place throughout the night, and the headless white woman and the tailless black sow were on the hunt for fresh blood. I really liked Nos Island Gale because it had such a Shirley Jackson vibe to it, and the lottery is one of my favorite stories. Also, it had just a great flow to it, interesting characters, an eerie setting, and among them was Lance and Sienna were both little assholes. They really were. I mean, Sienna was nothing but a little bully, and Lance is nothing but a little asshole trying to take her out. I mean, they're both terrible. The author, to me, did a very good job showing just how crappy kids can be. I mean, for real, if there was ever a story to promote birth control, this was it.
Another story I would like to talk about is Sisters by Brian Evanson.
Oh, yeah.
So, this tale focuses on a family unit where everything is relayed to the reader by a young narrator who speaks about her sister Millie. And early on, it's revealed that even though this family doesn't participate in the holidays, the sisters are allowed to participate in Halloween because their mother explains Halloween belongs to them and not to human beings. From here, the narrator and Millie decide to leave their bodies and try on some new flesh so they can have a greater understanding of the human experience. So after their bodies get tied up, they leave their host and they start roaming around the streets until they find this animatronic witch that they decide to possess. Then, after they have been laying dormant within the witch, their mother hunts them down and reprimands them for being out all night, such as any parent would. Even still, their mother allows them to hang out that night until midnight with the understanding that they return home at their expected time. So, as the evening progresses and the trick-or-treaters come out, eventually a little girl approaches the animatronic witch, and Millie uses this opportunity to strangle the hell out of the poor child. Which, this being as unexpected as what it is, the homeowner drops his bowl of candy and tries to help the poor girl. Well, since things took an unexpected turn, the narrator leaves the witch and returns home where she explains to her parents that they were seen. Shortly thereafter, Millie returns and explains that she strangled the girl to death. But as soon as this gets out of her mouth, the girl that Millie had strangled comes to their house to trick or treat, which they invite her inside, and for a hot minute they're having a really good time together. Like, the narrator even says that she's their new sister. Then it hits midnight and they eat her. This story really stood out to me because I really enjoyed the WTF ending, and also I'm still wondering exactly what the hell the narrator and her family are. Like, on one hand, they could easily be spirits because we have the possession aspect. But on the other hand, if they're aliens, this could explain why they call human beings specimens, and so, in this case, they would be using the body as a host. So, it could be one or the other. And even though I'm not clear on what they were, I do find it interesting that their mother explained Halloween as their holiday. And even though that's never explained, I'm assuming the reason why she says it's their holiday is because they're making a connection with using human bodies as a costume. Also, I would like to add that I really love this story because of its WTF ending.
Yeah.
Like, you accept this new girl into your home, you think, okay, well, she's now a part of their family unit, whatever that family unit is. But no, in just one sentence, it ends with, then we ate her.
Plot twist.
Like, how? Why? What the hell is going on? And it came out of nowhere. It just, I wasn't expecting that. I did not know that's what was going to happen. And it was so blunt and just there. I had no choice but to laugh and ask everyone, what in the hell is this? But you know what? That's the charm of this story, I believe.
I think.
And even though there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered, I think that everyone is going to have their own conclusion to what happened. And I think that no one is really going to be wrong with whatever their answer is. Now, even though these were some stories that stood out to us, there were quite a few others that we would rank among our favorites. So obviously, narrowing down this segment was really difficult.
As a matter of fact, we're going to use this next segment to talk about 2 more stories that we would rank up among our faves.
We would like to take this opportunity to bitch. Hit it, Picky.
I would like to take the opportunity to bitch today about that useless hemorrhoid of a husband and We're Never Inviting Amber Again by S.P. Miskowski. Let me break it down for you. This story is about this asshole named Drew who blames his sister-in-law Amber for his Halloween party going to hell in a handbasket. Now, although she is actually his ex and he doesn't like her, he and his wife Cicely invited her to their Halloween party because they want her to read palms. Now, before the party begins, Cicely explains how Amber doesn't want to read the palms or do the fortune thing anymore because she scared herself. And Drew, being a little man-child that he is, acted a fool and threw a tantrum. Well, Cicely tries to explain to her little dickweed of a husband how Amber had met a great, awesome guy named Hamish the night before, and how he had stayed the night, and on his way home, he had got attacked and killed at a red light, and how she wanted to warn him, but she didn't because she didn't want to scare the poor little bastard off. Now, even though all of this was explained to Drew, he is still acting a fool and not wanting to take no for an answer. He's trying to convince Amber to do it, and she won't, which gets him even more pissy. Now, as he's been a little asshole, Amber spots from the patio this 7-foot figure that she recognizes as her little man meat from the night before. And like anybody who experienced prime beef, she hightails it out of there and goes after him. And all the while, Drew's ranting, raving, bitching how they're never inviting Amber over again. Now, y'all, I have read about some douchebags in my day, but Drew is right up there in my top 3. He is such a narcissistic little asshole. First off, he gets like a complete ass because Amber doesn't want to read her tarot cards for his little ass white friends, and then acts like a little dick once she does arrive. Guess what, Drewfus? If she doesn't want to flip a card for you, she ain't got to. Everything about him irks the ever-living hell out of me. Then, after humiliating poor Amber, and when shit hit the fan, he didn't do a damn thing useful. I hope Cicely dumps his ass. But spoiler alert, Cicely ain't shit either, because as it turns out, back in the day, Drew was double dipping. And I ask you, Alex, what kind of sister does that?
You would do it. I would like to take this opportunity to bitch about those 2 crusty old dick cheeses in the story A Small Taste of the Old Country by Jonathan Mawberry. Now, the short and skinny of this is, back in the 1930s, this dude by the name of Becker, who has these mad baking skills, approaches these 2 sorry sacks of snake shit by the name of Gomez and Santiago. And after they have some chit-chat and everything, he lures them back to his bakery by offering them up some bussin' bread. Well, after it's revealed that all 3 men are immigrants, Becker explains that this is All Souls Week and it's customary to reflect on those who have died. And as the men continue just gobbling all of this shit down, he explains that it was his family and him who were big on tradition, and for that reason he served up these 2 dingleberries recipes that had been passed down to him by his dead ancestors. Then, as the men keep just stuffing their damn faces, he explains that his family died during the war and the cakes they're eating are actually magical. After a hot minute of Becker dropping hints left and right, these two dumbasses finally gather that Becker is Romani and he knows that they are the two ex-Nazis that killed his family during the war. And while it appears that they seem to have the same reaction as someone who just had their raisins grabbed, Becker continues to elaborate while his dead ancestors show up and chow down on their sorry asses the same way my fat ass would chow down on a birthday cake. I was so happy old dude Hansel and Gretel these two assholes because from the moment they stepped on page, I did not like their sorry asses. Like, they had these total mean girl vibes that really made me feel like if you didn't have anything to offer them, they weren't about to let you sit at their table. Also, even though Becker knew these sorry sons of bitches were gonna eat shit, I could have done things just a little differently. Like, maybe if they wouldn't have ever known this, I would have known it, and it would have made things that much better. I mean, yeah, I would have done the whole soul cake thing. I would have had my ancestors come and kill them, all of that good stuff.
Definitely.
But before they ate the cakes, I totally would have just rubbed them on my taint, then served them. Because that's how I roll. Haunted Nights, edited by Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton, is the ideal Halloween read because all of the authors in this book seem like they did a great job of honoring the holiday with a diversity of horrors, culture, lore, and superstition. Other than how we felt about the stories, there was a pretty good mix of characters that ranged from historic times to contemporary, and for the most part, we found them all to be pretty interesting.
And as far as themes go, we found they primarily focus on tradition and culture, but quite a few stories focus on subjects like homophobia, poverty, revenge, depression, and much more.
Character-wise, even though I enjoyed the wide range of characters that this book provided, the ones that I felt more invested in were featured in stories like A Small Taste of the Old Country, A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night, and All Through the Night. Which, among these, I really felt like the protagonist in A Small Taste of the Old Country by Jonathan Marbury had a lot of depth to him. And because of his actions, dialogue, and decisions, I really felt like he was a rich character with his culture and personality. Other than that, I did feel a great degree of sorrow for the characters in stories like A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night by Kate Jones and All Through the Night by Elise Fourier-Eady. Because under both circumstances, we're presented with families who have very little assistance and things never really get better for them. However, between the two, A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night remains pessimistic from beginning to end. And with All Through the Night, the ending does provide us with a positive outcome that makes the reader feel like there's always going to be a tomorrow and things have the potential to get better, and you just have to keep that will to live.
Haunted Nights had some interesting characters throughout the anthology, and among everyone, some of my favorites were the siblings and sisters by Brian Evenson because they kind of reminded me of my own sister. And despite everything that happened, they were still such cute characters by how they interacted. Also, I felt like the dad in Dirtmouth by Stephen Graham Jones was such an intriguing character, and while I'm not quite sure how reliable of a narrator he was, he just came across as such a lost soul after losing his wife. Aside from them, I really liked Amber If We're Never Inviting Amber Again by S.P. Miskowski because she was just unapologetically herself against her toxic little brother-in-law and wasn't afraid to stay firm and say no. And I also really enjoyed The Baker in A Small Taste of the Old Country by Jonathan Marbury because he was just a real badass and how he executed his revenge. Loved him. To be honest, I could go on longer, but yeah, those were a few of my faves.
Theme-wise, this book focuses on tradition and culture. which tradition is tackled in multiple ways throughout this collection.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the period piece known as Witch Hazel by Jeffrey Ford presents an origin story that details how some traditions begin, which, under this circumstance, we see how basic items can easily morph into symbols of protection.
Then a different concept is described in Paul Kane's cautionary tale, The Turn. And in it suggests that even though we as a society has moved well past superstitious times, some of the old traditions are still relevant today. So for that reason, it's good to keep some traditions alive because ignoring the old ways could be fatal.
Also, this book is seasoned throughout with culture.
Mm-hmm.
To give a few examples, the revenge story, A Small Taste of the Old Country, introduces a scenario about a baker whose family has collected different customs throughout their lineage. And in particular, soul cakes become the main focus of this work, where we learn a little bit more about their purpose.
Then in A Kingdom of Sugar Skulls and Marigolds by Eric J. Gunard, we see how an emotionally distraught man receives closure upon getting visited by his deceased loved ones on Day of the Dead. Aside from those, we had the revenge tale Nos Galan Gael by Kelly Armstrong, which brings its reader smack dab center of the Welsh holiday, which there's also the emotional tale All Through the Night, which focuses on Celtic beliefs and superstitions.
As far as poverty is concerned, I feel like we already touched on this subject when we were discussing our favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
Even still, we would like to elaborate a little bit more on the period piece All Through the Night,
Mm-hmm.
which this tale focuses on immigrants coming to America and not finding the dream that they had hoped for.
Mm-hmm.
And as the plot thickens, we see that not only are living conditions deplorable for the protagonist, but her baby is murdered by her employer. And this is so she can focus on work more than she can her child.
Mm-hmm.
And as our readers group and I were discussing this, we had learned from Hanny that this actually happened quite a bit during the time in which this story took place. Which, of course, this brings into perspective that the idea of workplace greed is a tale as old as time.
And while on the subject of poverty, A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night is a really good example on the subject because it focuses on a single mother who lives in Section 8 apartments. And as expected, she can barely care for her children, much less herself. And as the story progresses, we eventually see how poverty can lead to crime. For starters, we see that the area that the family resides in is surrounded by vandalism, and even the protagonist has to resort to theft in order to get gas for work. Also, it's established early on that the son is not getting the therapy and the help that he needs due to funds, which leads me to question exactly at what point will his mental illness get the better of him and he ends up harming someone else. But more importantly, this work really showcases how living in poverty and suffering from depression might result in the same ending that this story did.
Another subject that we noticed throughout was the topic of revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And this is primarily seen in stories like A Small Taste of the Old Country, Noskal and Gayoff, and A Kingdom of Sugar Skulls and Marigolds.
Which, although we've already kind of touched on these stories and we can't elaborate too much due to spoilers, just know that when this book presents a revenge story, it does so in a way that can be expected and unexpected.
And while mentioning A Kingdom of Sugar Skulls and Marigolds, this is where we see the subject of homophobia come into play, which, under these circumstances, due to a hate crime, revenge is the outcome. As far as depression's concerned, it goes without saying that this subject is reflected in stories about poverty. However, it's also presented in the story called Dirtmouth, which, similar to A Flicker of Light on Devil's Night and All Through the Night, this story presents the struggles of a single parent.
And under a circumstance, the protagonist finds himself in a predicament that can be either psychological or supernatural. However, he's actually going to say that's to bring him closure.
Aside from those subjects, obviously, this book presents quite a few other topics that we aren't discussing.
But just know that what we covered is just a small sampling of what the book has to offer.
So, overall, this book really didn't gross me out, but there were quite a few stories that did creep me out, and there were actually a couple that did scare me.
Yeah, overall, the book didn't gross me out, creep me out, or scare me or anything, but it really did keep me engaged the whole time and on my toes.
Haunted Nights, composed by Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton, is a collection that is full of the Halloween spirit.
And since many of the stories are written with such an openness to it, there are many circumstances where the reader must draw their own conclusion to receive closure.
Which, to be honest, I don't mind having that type of ending because sometimes not knowing is a little bit more frightening than knowing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you are looking for a solid collection that honors Halloween and its surrounding days, where the reader is presented with nothing but originality and plot twist, then I do highly recommend Haunted Nights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I highly recommend the book too. It is such a fun little read. It has something for everybody and just a great book to buddy read with friends.
Now that we're at the end of this video, I would just like to say thank you for returning.
Thank you for having me back. It's been so much fun.
Of course, and I know that we're going to go on a little hiatus with our buddy reads, but you are returning in the near future for another buddy read.
Yes.
So, yeah, totally expect to see more of her. Also, before I close out this video, I would just like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon account as well, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos. And if there is a profession you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll include that as well. Also, I do have a $10 tier available, where for $10 a month, I'll still give you this shout out, but I do creepy photography on the side. So at the beginning of every month, I'll send you over one of my creepy photos. From there, you can print it off and do whatever you like with it. So if you're able to do this, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a good time together. And if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are all available in the description section of this episode. So if you would like to hit me up, feel free to do so. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I do have more book reviews in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope everyone's doing well and sweet nightmares.